Assad was a resident of a small village. One day, he was returning to his village from the city. The path he had to take was desolate and passed through a dense forest. Dusk had fallen, and the darkness was growing. The village was still an hour away. A slight uneasiness crept into Assad's heart, but he reassured himself that it was just his imagination. Suddenly, his bike broke down. There was no one around, just dense trees and shrubs. He tried restarting the bike, but to no avail. Exhausted, he began pushing it along the road. After walking some distance, he felt as though someone was following him. When he stopped, the sound of footsteps behind him also stopped. He turned around but saw no one. His heart began to pound, and he quickened his pace, trying to calm himself. A little further along, he heard a whisper, like someone softly calling his name. Assad! Assad! The voice was so faint and eerie that it sent shivers down his spine. He quickly looked around, but there was nothing except the darkness and shadows of trees. Convinced something strange was happening, Assad left his bike and started walking briskly. The whispers, however, continued to echo in his ears. Eventually, he reached an old well. He suddenly felt his feet freeze, as if something had stopped him. A cold breeze emanated from the well, and a shadow seemed to be staring at him. Just as he was about to step back, a familiar voice startled him. It was the voice of his childhood friend Riaz, who had died years ago after falling into the same well. Assad, get me out of here. I'm so lonely. The voice resonated. Assad's body went numb. He tried to run, but his feet felt glued to the ground. Then, a cold shadow moved closer to him, leaning in slowly. Assad tried to scream, but the sound stuck in his throat. Suddenly, someone touched his back. Startled, he turned to see an old man from the village. The man held Assad's hand and said, "This place is cursed. Never stop here at night. Come, I'll take you to the village." Without saying a word, Assad walked with the old man toward the village. But when he looked back, the old man had vanished. To this day, Assad never found out who he was or whether he was even real. After that incident, Assad never traveled that road at night. But the whispers and the cold shadow stayed with him, etched in his memory. Since that day, Assad began having the same dream every night. In the dream, he stood by the same well, hearing Riaz's voice calling out to him, "Assad, save me." The voice would shift between faint and loud, waking Assad up drenched in sweat. Terrified, he didn't share his nightmares with anyone. One day, he mustered the courage to speak to the village elder, Hakim Chacha. After listening to Assad, Hakim Chacha sighed deeply and said, "Son, the story of that well is ancient. Anyone who goes there gets trapped by its curse. Your friend Riaz fell victim to it. But if you're dreaming about him, it means he's trying to tell you something." Hakim Chacha warned him, "Remember, going near that well is dangerous. There's a power there that can pull you in. If you must go, don't go alone, and return before sunset." Determined to save his friend, Assad decided to visit the well. He gathered 3 friends, Salim, Arman, and Farouk, and planned to go there during daylight. When they reached the well, an eerie coldness enveloped the area. The wind stopped, and even the birds went silent. Nature itself seemed to hold its breath. Salim told Assad, "This place doesn't feel right. We should leave." But Assad explained his recurring dreams and said, "If I don't help my friend, I'll never find peace." Assad approached the edge of the well and peered inside. The darkness was impenetrable, but suddenly he noticed ripples in the water, as though someone was watching him. Then came the familiar voice, "Assad, save me." Assad leaned closer to look, but Arman grabbed his arm and pulled him back, shouting, "What are you doing? You'll fall." Assad steadied himself. Just then, a shadow began rising from the well. It slowly ascended, taking on a human-like form. The four friends froze in fear. The shadow spoke in a deep voice, "You shouldn't have come here. This is my world. Now, you cannot leave." Terrified, they tried to run, but their feet felt rooted to the ground. The shadow moved closer. Assad gathered his courage and shouted, "We mean no harm. I only want to help my friend Riaz." The shadow stopped abruptly, silent for a moment. Then, in a low voice, it said, "If you wish to save him, you must give me your most precious possession." Assad hesitated but asked, "What is it?" The shadow replied, "Your soul." His friends were stunned. Selim yelled, "This is madness. We're leaving." But Assad agreed to sacrifice his soul for Riaz. As soon as he did, a bright light emanated from the well, and Assad collapsed. When he regained consciousness, he was in the village with his friends. Selim explained that as soon as Assad agreed, the shadow disappeared, and they found themselves far from the well. After that day, Assad's dreams stopped, but some villagers claimed they still heard whispers near the well at night. Others reported seeing shadows. Though Assad's nightmares were over, he often felt that something remained unfinished. Occasionally, on moonlit nights, he would sense a faint voice in the breeze saying, "Thank you, Assad."